Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Bhavam Sapadaraj ki Jai. Astutara Sata Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaur Premana.
It's a great pleasure to speak on this auspicious day celebrating the speaking and distribution of Bhagavad Gita. When you think of Bhagavad Gita, you should immediately think of it being eternally spoken by Lord Krishna. That's how important Bhagavad Gita is. Krishna says again and again, he speaks it. Now, it's a great step forward if we consider Bhagavad Gita as our personal guidebook for our individual spiritual life. But actually, as Krishna explains in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he especially spoke it for the heads of state. Imam Rajasayo. He spoke to the heads of state because if they're actually going to be responsible, if they're actually going to give guidance and protection to the citizens, they have to understand the transcendental science. Otherwise, how can the people actually be benefited by the government? If the king, the president, the prime minister has no idea what is the identity of his citizens or of himself, herself. So let's think about that. Right in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4, Krishna establishes this Bhagavad Gita is more than an individual guidebook for a yogi in solitude. This Bhagavad Gita is meant for guiding the leaders of states how to truly benefit their citizens. So Krishna tells Arjuna in that same 4th chapter, many times you and I have gone through this scenario of your being in illusion and my speaking Bhagavad Gita to you. In that way, the whole world can see the process of escaping illusion and reattaching to Krishna. Krishna told Arjuna, many, many times we've done this Bhagavad Gita distribution. I can remember all the times, but you cannot, Arjuna, because you're tiny. That's the difference between the living entity, even a pure living entity as Arjuna, and the Supreme. So Krishna establishes very firmly, very solidly, that the distribution of Bhagavad Gita is essential for the core welfare of society, both in terms of the individuals that make up society, as well as in terms of society as a whole itself. Sometimes people ask, what is so special about this Bhagavad Gita that is called Bhagavad Gita as it is? There are so many translations of Bhagavad Gita. Why is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness stressing this Bhagavad Gita so much? You see, as Krishna himself admits in Bhagavad Gita, there's a problem understanding Krishna. He explains, he presents his personal situation in terms of everyone misunderstanding him, not accepting him as he is. They either think he's an ordinary person, or they think he's some kind of impersonal presence that took a temporary form. Actually, Bhagavad Gita is spoken in very simple and clear Sanskrit. But perhaps the conclusion is so impactful that so many commentators and so many renditions of Bhagavad Gita want to escape or wiggle around what Krishna says about himself. Because if we actually take it straight on, if we take the simple Sanskrit straight on, we realize we have some major transformations to make in life. And indeed, Bhagavad Gita is a book of transformation. It challenges us, and it points out the full spectrum of choices that we have as human beings. One thing that people appreciate about Bhagavad Gita, East and West, is that Bhagavad Gita is not really a book of commandments. Bhagavad Gita presupposes basic moral understanding like thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Bhagavad Gita presupposes that such basic moral understandings are already there. And so Bhagavad Gita is free to soar on higher levels. Krishna lays out the choices. There are different ways to approach Krishna. Some are very slow and troublesome. The way Krishna recommends is the best, of course, direct and most effective. At the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, I've explained everything to you. Deliberate on it very deeply and do as you wish to do. It's very powerful. Krishna does not interfere with the independence of his parts and parcels. Now you may say, Krishna, why don't you just end my struggle for enlightenment? Just end my struggle for existence in this world and just force me to love you. Why do I have to endeavor? But Krishna doesn't want forced love. You don't want that. You want to be chosen. You want to feel that someone has chosen to be with you because you're so attractive. And Krishna is genuinely and unlimitedly attractive. He wants that the living entities exercise their tiny independence to choose him. Because remember, Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. He knows how to get the best love. So once we give up our pride, our false ego that we know what love is and why is Krishna doing like this, why is Krishna doing like that, once we give up that pride and we accept that Krishna is the supreme specialist in love, then we can listen more attentively. And especially we can consider why it is that Krishna tells Arjuna, you think about it and do what you want to do. Choice is so important in spiritual advancement because choice triggers real love. And what was Arjuna's response? Nashta moha shmitir lupta. By your mercy, I'm out of illusion. Kadishe vachanam tava. I'll act according to what you say. He's choosing. That's the perfect culmination of reading Bhagavad Gita. What about Krishna himself? Who is he anyway? It would seem very simple to understand who Krishna is just by accepting his words in Bhagavad Gita as they are. In fact, Arjuna confirms, Krishna, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, it's not simply that I'm saying that, because people may say I'm your friend, and therefore I'm saying so many things about you. But no, all the greatest acharyas, greatest yogis, greatest saintly persons say that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I also concur. So Krishna's position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Yogeshvara, the master of all yoga power. Yogis should understand that there is a master of yoga. Sometimes Krishna is known as Yogeshvareshvara, the master of the masters of yoga. So, he explains himself to Arjuna as such. And Arjuna confirms all the greatest personalities say this about you. And then in chapter 11 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna reveals his universal form in that way, giving evidence. Here it is. You want to see my cosmic splendor? Here it is. In that way, Krishna is also letting any pretender gods know. You want to tell everyone that you're God and they're God, and by mystic meditation and yoga you can also be God. Display your universal form. So all these confirmations of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead are there in Bhagavad Gita. So then you might say, well, why is it that if you happen to look at so many other editions of Bhagavad Gita, who Krishna is not very clear, even though Krishna speaks so clearly about who he is. Let me give you an example from my own personal experience. I was studying at the university, and I had it in my mind to study Hinduism. I was looking for the best knowledge. I was getting tired of Western knowledge and seeing the futility of politics and economics. So there was a world-famous professor teaching a course in Hinduism. This is at Yale University. So I said, well, let me sign up for this course, even though there's an extraordinary problem for me with this course. What was that problem? It met at 8 a.m. And as a normal student, my rising time was no earlier than 10:30. An 11 a.m. class, that was the limit. Nothing before that. But to study the course on Hinduism by the world-famous professor, I decided to make the ultimate sacrifice. I get up 7:30, throw on my clothes, and dash to class at 8 o'clock. So I arrived at the classroom, and the professor was going over the course, what it would be like, what it would cover. And he gave the first assignment. Read a section of the Upanishads and write a paper based on what you think it means. So I just, wait a minute. I've gotten up this early in the morning just to hear the world-famous professor tell me I should read some of the Vedas and write a paper. I should speculate on what I think it means. I don't need to come to class in order to speculate. I can do that with my friends at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I said, forget this class. I'm not going to take it. But I'm interested in the subject matter. What I will do, I'll go to the Yale University bookstore and I'll get all the required reading for the course and I'll read it on my own, be independent. So I did that. There was one text which had an interesting title, Yoga, Immortality, and Freedom, but it was as dry as can be. I just looked at a few pages and said, forget this. And then there was an edition of Bhagavad Gita. So I glanced through this particular edition of Bhagavad Gita, and the person who authored it had the verses in the front and his commentary in the back. So I just leafed through the commentary. And then I saw one sentence that just totally brought out an extraordinary adverse reaction in me for some reason or other. This person, this professor, another world-famous professor, had written, Krishna is a concept meant to satisfy both the intellectuals and the sentimentalists. So for some reason, I just slammed the book shut and I threw it against the wall. And I never opened it again. So there's an example of the great confusion, the great havoc caused by mistaken versions of Bhagavad Gita. And unfortunately, we have to say that at least 95% of the editions of Bhagavad Gita available in English have problems with Krishna. They ignore him, or else they no one more dear to me than the one who distributes this message. Nor there'll never be anyone more dear to me. And he who studies this sacred conversation worships me with his or her intelligence. So here's our chance. We can cooperate with Krishna in his eternal mission of distributing Bhagavad Gita. You may say, well, I know I have so many friends, I have so many relatives, I could give them a Bhagavad Gita, but would they ever read it? You just don't know where these books are going to wind up. You don't know who will pick up that book and read it. You may give it to one of your friends or relatives. You may give it to someone you don't know. And amazing things will happen because the book is the presence of Krishna. That means wherever Bhagavad Gita goes, the deity of Krishna is present. So you can play such a key role in assisting Krishna in his eternal mission of coming again and again with the true knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Remember, it's not the verses that become lost. It's the genuine purport. Krishna knows the effect of time. He doesn't cover up this phenomenon, but he does something about it. And his devotees want to assist him in doing something about preserving the true message of Bhagavad Gita. Another point. Through Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is offering eternal life. In religions that originated from the Near East, just like you may call Bhagavad Gita Hinduism, well then you have to refer to the religions from the Near East as Jordanism. They all come from the area of the Jordan River. Hindu means across the Sindhu River, but as you've heard several times, no doubt, those living on the west side of the Sindhu River, they couldn't pronounce that sound, so it came out Hindu. So they call those persons on the other side of the river Hindus. So the term Hindu is actually a geographical and cultural term. The equivalent would be to call Islam, Christianity, and Judaism as Jordanism. They're associated all around the Jordan River. So be that as it may, in the religions from the Near East, they're always offering eternal life as the reward. The wages of sin are death, but the gift of God is eternal life. I learned that verse in Sunday school, and certainly it is true. But in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna doesn't offer eternal life. He teaches you, you already are eternal. Now what are you going to do about it? You can either rotate eternally in the cycle of repeated birth and death, samsara, or you can eternally reside with him in the spiritual world. So one way or another, you're always eternal. Now what are you going to do about it? Do you plan to be around taking one body after another in such a period of time that you can't find the limit? Therefore, it's practically eternity. Or do you want to associate with Krishna eternally? So, what Bhagavad Gita is placing as the core issue is, how do you want to be eternal? Since you already are eternal, you already have eternal life. We don't feel uncomfortable with the term Hindu because it has convenience, but Bhagavad Gita gives everyone, Hindu or not, a precise understanding of the science of the Supreme. And that science of the Supreme is the most important gift to give. Not this cultural label or that ethnic label. Those things change all the time as the body changes, as the world changes. But what is it about the core essence that doesn't change, even though the body and society are always changing? This is what Bhagavad Gita is concerned with. So in that way, Bhagavad Gita is beneficial for everyone, no matter what river they're associated with. Whether it's the Sindhu River or the Jordan River, Mississippi River. Do they have any rivers in California? Drying up. So, this is why you can easily present anyone with a Bhagavad Gita without worrying about their ethnic or cultural background. Now they may say when you hand the Bhagavad Gita to them as a Christmas present or whatever, oh, isn't this an Indian book? And you can tell them that, the example Srila Prabhupada always gave, that the sun may rise in the east, but the sun is for the benefit of the whole world. Similarly, it may seem that Bhagavad Gita is Indian, but actually Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gita for the benefit of everyone. It may seem the sun rises in the east, therefore the sun belongs to the east. Of course, the eastern direction is glorified by the rising of the sun. Similarly, India is glorified, not for IT wallas, but because of the teachers of Bhagavad Gita. So in this way, you feel encouraged to just let the Bhagavad Gitas fly. They'll fly out of your head. Wrap them up as gifts. Beautiful cover. Such an authentic look about it. I remember the first time I finally got Bhagavad Gita as it is. I had graduated from university by that time. And I met a Krishna devotee on the street. I approached him because he looks interesting. I asked him what he had, and he offered me a small book, and I bought it. And so I read the small book, and I decided the next day to go to Greenwich Village in New York City to look for more books by this Swami's name I couldn't pronounce. And so I got a Bhagavad Gita as it is, the Macmillan edition, which was not as big as our present edition, but nevertheless it was enough to do the job. I read it eagerly from cover to cover, and I looked at the back, and there was an address where you could order more books from the BBT in Los Angeles. So I did that because I was unfortunate. I didn't want to associate with devotees. I just loved the books. So I ordered book after book from the BBT in Los Angeles. For 6 months I did that. I would read Prabhupada's books 4 hours a day for 6 months straight without ever going to the temple or any bhakti gathering, bhakti lounge, bhakti house, bhakti chakra, bhakti rickshaw, whatever. Zero, nothing. I didn't want anything to do with it. Just Hare Krishnas, but the books were so wonderful. Finally, it's a long story, but finally I did. After 6 months, I did go to the temple. So, we all have experienced the power, the clarity, the lucidity that enters our life when we approach Bhagavad Gita properly. So Srila Prabhupada has taken so much time and effort to make sure that indeed we can approach Bhagavad Gita without imposing our conceptions. That's the sign of a master teacher. He knows how to frame the subject matter so that you don't lose yourself, so that you don't confuse yourself. It's not that what Krishna says is confusing, but we confuse ourselves. I don't know, Krishna. You say this about you. I don't know if I want to accept that. So, the bhakti path in Bhagavad Gita is so clear. Krishna says that the Jnana Yoga, the yoga of metaphysical knowledge, the Karma Yoga, the yoga of action, the Jnana Yoga, the yoga of meditation, all to reach their ultimate success have to culminate in bhakti. So therefore, why not just take to bhakti immediately and directly? That's the easiest way. And again and again, Krishna says, it's only by bhakti that I can be understood. Therefore, you should always think of me. Become my devotee. Sometimes misinterpreters say that Bhagavad Gita is a book that offers so many paths. That's the glory of it. It's like a grab bag. You can just open Bhagavad Gita and pick out the path you want, whatever suits you, and do it. And you'll all attain the divine whatever. No, Bhagavad Gita is very specific. That in order to attain the supreme destination, in order to attain Krishna, there's a prescribed process, which sooner or later must culminate in bhakti. So it's not that bhakti is just for emotional people. Maybe you've heard that before. Maybe you've heard that the Jnana Yoga, the yoga of metaphysical knowledge, is for the scholarly types. And the Jnana Yoga, the yoga of meditation, is for those who like mystic yoga and sit in a lotus position. And the Karma Yoga is for those who like to work in the world. And Bhakti is for the emotional people. As Krishna describes Bhakti in Bhagavad Gita, it is based on a solid foundation of knowledge and yogic detachment from matter. In other words, the emotionalism that Krishna is talking about in Bhagavad Gita is not sentiment. It is the product of the greatest purification, the greatest wisdom, the greatest understanding. Then there can be real relationships. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is for real, and he's telling his parts and parcels, he's telling us, be for real. Understand you are spirit soul, part of the Supreme Soul, and let's associate together again. One more point. Bhagavad Gita is both regal as well as sweet. It's a royal text because Krishna said, I actually speak this to the heads of state, kings, and so on and so forth. It's full of instructions for how the citizens of the world can perfect their life. But also, Bhagavad Gita is sweet because Krishna is beckoning, come to me. Let us begin our relationship again. Always think of me. Become my devotee. Just abandon all preconceptions of what you think you should do, and let's be together again. Very sweet. So Bhagavad Gita has many different levels, and all the levels are necessary for human progress. In short, there's nothing better than you can do for your friends and relatives, even if you don't know the people, than to place a Bhagavad Gita in their hand or somewhere near them. Because as I said before, you don't know where these books are going to end up. If you would ever hear the stories of what happens when Bhagavad Gita's, genuine Bhagavad Gita starts circulating through the world. Let me see, I have one story in mind I just heard 2 weeks ago. Let me try to say it in the proper context. There's this, he's a devotee now. His name is Devamrita. Disciple of told his Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And he was telling me how he was an assembly line worker at an auto engine factory in Cleveland. So ordinarily you would probably never consider that such a person would be interested in Bhagavad Gita. So he told me he would go down south every once in a while to visit his family. And so there he was one morning at his mother-in-law's house. And he said normally he sleeps on his side, but for some reason that night he slept on his stomach. And so when he woke up in the morning and opened his eyes, he saw a book. And it said Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the graduate study of Bhagavad Gita, for those who don't know. And he was waking up and seeing this, he couldn't pronounce the word. Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam. So he decided to just pull the book down and start reading it. He read just 4 pages, he said, and then put it back. So he left his Arkansas, that's where he was visiting his relatives, and he drove back to Cleveland to work in the auto factory, but he couldn't get those 4 pages out of his mind. So then, a few months later, he drove back down to Arkansas, and the book was still on the shelf above the bed, and he just started reading it. His mother-in-law came in. "What are you doing? Are you sleeping all day? Are you just in there just reading? You can have the book if you want it. Let's go take it." So he said, yes, I definitely want this book. And so that night he went to sleep, and again, rarely he was sleeping on his stomach. And he woke up in the morning, and the first thing that he saw when he woke up was, what is it? Bhagavad Gita. This sounds like that Srimad Bhagavatam. So he pulled the book down, and he started reading it, and his mother-in-law came in. "Oh, you found that other book. You can have that one too." So he asked her, "Where did these books come from?" And she told him, "Oh, your brother-in-law was passing through an airport when he was in the army, and and he got these books. So you can take them. So he would just read these books, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. He had no idea where to find devotees. So he started writing to BBT mail order in Los Angeles, and they told him, "Look, if you really want all the books to become a life member, you pay $1,111, and you can get a full set of books and a subscription to Bhakti Gita magazine." Really, no problem. He's an assembly line worker, but he said, "I want knowledge." I asked her, "Why did you do that? Why did you, just start reading those books? Why did you just become so attached to Bhagavad Gita?" In his simple way, he just replied, "Krishna's in my heart." What can I say? So he couldn't find devotees. And then someone told him that they had a temple on a certain street in Cleveland, and he said that he would always actually drive up that street on his way to work. He had to be to work at 7:30. But whenever he'd go past, he'd never see anyone. And he didn't understand why. Later he found out why he never saw anyone. But anyway, one time he went by and he saw some devotees. And he just stopped the car, jumped out, got his Bhagavad Gita, and was running over them. "Is this your book? Is this your book? This is a great book." He said it in a more ethnic way, but anyway. And I said, "Yeah, that's our book." He said, how come I never see anyone here?" He said, "That's because we have our service at 4:30 in the morning." He said, "Wow, you have church at 4:30 in the morning?" I said, "Yes, you can come. So since he had to be at work at 7:30, he just got up a little earlier and started going to the Mongol Arti. And he was just amazed that they're singing, they're jumping, they're rejoicing at 4:30 in the morning. Then the temple closed and he didn't know it. So he wrote the BBT mailer and they wrote him back saying that the temple's closed, unfortunately, at that time. But we're having house meetings at this place. So we went to the house meeting and one time and didn't seem to think much of it, but he didn't go back again. He just kept reading Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam at home. And he decided to put the words Hare Krishna on the back of his jacket. So he's walking through, the inner city of Cleveland. He's like a real nonconformist. So, and as he's walking, he notices a car, following behind him close to the curb. And he just, what's this? Anyway, it's Cleveland, anything can happen, but I'm minding my own business, so he just kept walking, and the car kept following behind him. So finally, he just, turned and looked at the car, and someone pulled up and said, "You got Hare Krishna on the back of your jacket. You have to, come to our meeting. We're having a wonderful gathering. There's a wonderful devotee." That was His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj coming to speak on that weekend. You have to be there. And so he came, and so then he kept on reading Bhagavad Gita. Remember, this all started because he found some books at his mother-in-law's house, and her son had bought these books at the airport, never read them, just put them on the shelf. And remember, he's just laying in bed, or sleeping on his stomach, which he never does, and he opens his eyes, and the first thing he sees when his eyes open are these books. So, he was working at an auto plant in Cleveland that's now closed, CRW or something like that. And every time the shifts would change, you're supposed to leave notices on the bulletin board for the incoming shift, anything strange that happened with the machines on the assembly line. So he would start putting verses from Bhagavad Gita on the notice board. and some of the workers started to complain, and the supervisor had to tell them, look, you stop doing this. The notice board has its own purposes, and here you are putting this strange kind of stuff on. What he didn't know was that another lady there, another assembly line shift worker, was reading these notices from Bhagavad Gita on the bulletin board and wondering, what is this? This looks very interesting. So they stopped his notices on the bulletin board, so he decided he would strike back. A huge factory. Huge wall from beginning to end on each side of the factory. It's assembly line, so huge factory. So the walls were totally filthy. So what he did with his assembly line knowledge, he got some solvent, and with the solvent, he cut through all the grease and grime on the walls and put Krishna in huge letters. A week later, the management ordered a whole team to come and clean the factory wall. He said, well, at least I got it to clean. He said, maybe I should do it on the other wall too, to clean the whole factory. What he didn't know was, again, this lady working on the assembly line, not only has she seen the notices on the bulletin board from Bhagavad Gita, but she also saw the word Krishna in huge letters on the inside wall of the factory. So she was wondering what was going on. So she started making inquiries. And who's doing this? Who's doing this? And so, the other workers told him, it's him, it's him, it's him. So then she started making a point, because her shift ended when his shift began. So she would always say something to him. And he started talking to her. And at one point, because she was there, I was so interested. Who is this Krishna? Who is speaking these verses from Bhagavad Gita? Something just came over me. And one day, as I walked past him, I said, hey, husband. And he just replied, Okay, wife. But if you're my wife, why weren't you home yesterday when I came from work? You know, they were just socializing, in a factory way, you know. Anyway, they've been married for 15 years at Krishna consciousness now. So it all began with Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Gita's graduate study, Srimad Bhagavatam, in the hands of persons you would normally never expect. They couldn't even pronounce the title of the book, yet they read it and were so touched. So this is a great example showing you, as Srila Prabhupada would always say, you don't know the magic that these books do. It's beyond our material conception. But here's our opportunity to join with Krishna in this most precious activity of circulating Bhagavad Gitas throughout the world. Something Krishna himself does. He comes to this world again and again and speaks Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And then gives us our chance to assist him and says, anyone who does this, there'll never be anyone more dear to me. So please remember that and let us do our little part as big as we can to expand the glories of Bhagavad Gita as it is.
So we'd like to thank His Holiness Devamrita Maharaj. So now we would like to ask all of you here if you could help us with this Gita Dawn program. This is Shastrakrit Das. He's distributing a lot of these Bhagavad Gitas here throughout the month and the weeks coming up after. So if anyone here would like to make a pledge to buy a case of Bhagavad Gitas or one Bhagavad Gita before you go.
I work
Yes.
one from Vidur and Manjari, the case.
Okay, hard.
Yes, hard case. And two from me.
So Krishna Prema, he'll take one case, and his mother and father, Manjari and Vidur Das, they'll take another case. So 2 cases. Thank you very much. Yes. One case here.
We'll pass out these forms. You can fill them up and you can give them to me. I'll be outside in the book table.
Thank you.
You can